Hey, what's up, everybody? We have a new YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe right now. Leave a comment on the video. Share it with your friends. It's also a podcast, 3 and Out, wherever you listen with me, John Middlekauff, Apple, Spotify. We have you covered, as well as thevolume.com. We have merch. Check out. I got 3 and Out hats right now. Thevolume.com. Search the podcast. Buy some merch. Okay, mailbag at John Middlekauff, Instagram. Fire into those DMs. You guys know the drill. Instagram wide open. What's up, my guy? Wondering what you think about the Packers offseason. Love your content. I said it when I thought they had the 2 running backs. I'm like, this offense is going to be unstoppable. Even go with Jacobs over Aaron Jones. I mean, I think they're both big-time players. I don't know if that's a huge upgrade, but he's definitely a really good player. So your running game is still going to be awesome. Listen, before free agency or the draft, it was hard not to buy stock in the operation. It's all going to come down to Halfley and the defense. Your offense, assuming Jordan Love just sustains some level of what we saw at the end, is going to be really good. So it's all going to come down to, can your defense, and I said this the other day, can it just be solid, right? You sign the safety from the Giants, pay him a lot of money. You've invested a lot of picks over the years on the defensive side of the ball, high in the draft. But your coordinators, let's face it, have taken a lot of shit. You guys were ready to run out Joe Barry like 2 games into a stint. Pettin, you guys couldn't stand. Before that, some of the guys McCarthy had. It's just been, can you get a guy that goes, this guy's going to be a head coach? And that's a big difference. For example, the 49ers, who have had more playoff success recently, and the Rams, who won the Super Bowl, they've both had good defensive coordinators. Raheem Morris, Brandon Staley for the year, Wade Phillips, the 49ers, D'Amico, Robert Saleh. If you guys get a defensive coordinator, I mean, you have one, but if Jeff Halfley is in the conversation to be a head coach in 2 years, I don't see how you guys aren't legit NFC contenders. I have a question about scouting and what GMs and coaches are looking for in the draft. Where do you fall in measurables versus the tape? I really like the corner Mike saying a real still. I just butchered his name from Michigan. He's said to likely go in the 3rd day of the draft, and he's likely to be a special teams nickel corner. However, all I see on tape is aggressive, great tackling, physical player. He reminds me of a slider, Trent McDuffie. Pretty good comp. You said that in a draft meeting, people are looking at you. They're like, wait, this guy's a 4th, 5th rounder, you're comparing him to McDuffie? But all I hear on TV is length, 40, upside. Say it all the time. There's 2 elements to the draft. Picking good players and knowing the value of what you have to use to pick the guy. You could love this corner, but you wouldn't use a 2nd-round pick on him if you know he's going to be there in the 4th round. That's terrible value. Right? You would never spend $100,000 on something if you could get it for 60. So the key to the draft is not whether this guy, like in your mind, you might think he's going to be really good as a team, right? But you have to value, and I say this all the time, the draft or the combine is a lot like an inspection report. It does not determine the guy's success or failure rate in the pros, but it does determine or impact where he's going to go in the draft. So if you're a corner and you run a slow 40, I don't know. I don't have all these guys measurables. Like, it's going to impact you. If you're a wide receiver and you run a slow 40, like, it's going to impact you. Now, it doesn't mean Keenan Allen's not fast. You get him in the 3rd round, he's an elite player. So I think in the 1st round, now, you're going to lean traits, the good teams do, with the character and the upside, right? It's Anthony Richardson. Let's just look at quarterbacks. It doesn't mean it's always going to work. But Anthony Richardson went 4th. Josh Allen went 7th. Trey Lance went 3rd because of traits. Zach Wilson, same thing. Big arm, big athlete. A lot of other position players as well. You can't go safe high because there's no such thing as safe in the draft. So certain organizations value different things. You know, the Packers historically have always been a traits team. They really value that. And when it works, you're like, holy shit. Like the wide receiver Watson from North Dakota State. Now, he's got to fix the hamstring issue. But clearly, like, they took a swing on a guy, smaller school guy with a big time trait, and that's elite speed. Now, he's also got to catch the ball, but you know what I mean. I uh Philosophically, I mean, being around Andy, he's more of a swing guy. But the one thing you've seen them do in Kansas City, they swing on traits with football character, right? McDuffie has a lot of traits. Uh, what's his name? Marcus Peters, when they drafted him high, has a lot of traits. Why do the Cowboys never do anything? And was talking to a buddy of mine, and I was talking about the Kirko deal, and he reminded me that Kirko went to the Vikings. Keenum had those Kirk Cousins, I think, boys in the conference chipper, and he couldn't make a playoff win with the same team, top 5 defense and a loaded offense. Say it all the time. If the Dallas Cowboys had $50 million in cap space, free agents would be lined up to go there. 1, no state income tax. 2, your brand builds as a player. And 3, I mean, they're legitimately a solid football team right now. But they never have any money because they always extend their own players at a lot of money. I mean, it's not like, oh, they just signed their own guy at a team-friendly deal. I mean, they break the bank for their players. And they're gonna do that with Micah Parsons. They're gonna do that with CeeDee Lamb. They've done that before with Dak. They did it with Zeke. They've done it with their offensive linemen. There's nothing wrong with doing that if you get good players, but that's the reason they never have any money. They just pay their own guys, which is a positive. It's not like a negative. You just better pay your right guys. I mean, that Zeke contract cost them, right? They regretted that very, very quickly. Why is it that some quarterbacks don't cut team deals on contracts to help bring in more talent? For example, Cousins has already made enough money for his great-great-great-grandkids to live comfortably. Why would he not take a contract around $30 million instead of $45 million so that the Falcons have more ability to sign talent? First, I always find it funny. Like, societally, we always make fun of people that inherit their money, that never had to do shit for their money. Like, what a fucking loser. Was just handed this life. Must be easy. Yet with athletes, and I'm not, you're not doing this, but the media always celebrates, you got to take care of your great-great-grandkids. Well, I'm never going to meet my great-great-grandkids. If I make $100 million, like, do I just want him to just have $20 million in the slush fund? I don't want the guy to go hungry, but he just gets to start his life at a sweet country club, right? I mean, he gets a Ferrari when he's 16. I never understand the dichotomy of the conversation. We crush 99% of society, but then it's like, yeah, you got to take care of your great-great-grandkids. Do you? Isn't that my kid's son's job to parent throughout? Like, isn't it better if I give good leadership and good life lessons? It always crosses my mind. Listen, I think at this point in time, if they're offering you that much money, why do you say no? Clearly, he's had a strategy, which it's hard for me to talk shit about. It's just been the most money humanly possible every single time. And he knows this vehicle of playing football lasts 15 years, right? He's going to end up being a starter for about 15 years because remember, the first couple of years he didn't play. And he maximized his value more than any player probably in league history. But you could make the argument, like, you've already made $300+ million. If you go to Atlanta and you win, like, so instead of taking 40 million, what if you took 27 and Arthur Blank helps you out with some business deals? It just doesn't happen that way. So I'm kind of done even talking like that. Brady's an outlier, but I say it all the time. You make a lot of money the rest of your life when you're a winner. And at this point in time, he's made so much money that he'll never, ever, everything in his life moving forward is free. Like, he's so rich, he could buy a plane, buy an unlimited amount of houses. He's got a lot of money. And if people in his life, which he has, I know his agent, like, he's got pretty high level guys. I would imagine he's in some good financial investments and life's going to be pretty good. I don't think it's crazy. Because if you're Kirk Cousins, like, hey, remember when Kirk Cousins at 37 won a Super Bowl in Atlanta? It would become pretty legendary stuff, but he doesn't really operate like that. I also understand, like, hey, they're offering you. I guess your point is, like, you go to them, like, hey, let's structure this. Let's do a 3-year, $90 million deal and guarantee me whatever you were going to guarantee me. Still, the same could be guaranteed. The thrill and excitement of March Mania is here. And DraftKings Sportsbook, one of America's top-rated sportsbook apps, is giving new customers a shot to turn $5 into $150 instantly in bonus bets with any college basketball bet. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code JOHN, J-O-H-N. New customers can bet $5 to get $150 instantly in bonus bets only at DraftKings Sportsbook with code JOHN. The crown is yours. I hate the NFL changed the numbering system. I know they originally did it to make more uniform for fans, but now we have defensive ends wearing single digits. Last year, Clowney wearing 24. I'm sorry. I hate to be like an old man curmudgeon. I can't get behind that. At some point, a quarterback won't have a number available between 1 and 19. What do you think of it? I don't like it. I don't like it. I'm not totally opposed to a defensive lineman wearing a single digit because I'm a big college football fan. A lot of them do that. But Clowney, 24. I was fine just with wide receivers in the 80s, running backs in the 20s and 30s, right? Linebackers in the 50s, O-linemen in the 60s and 70s. Call me a purist, but I didn't think we needed to change. I was on Tom Brady's side that was like, why are we doing this? Big Colts fan. Sad to see Minshew leave. I am not an AR fan. That'd be Anthony Richardson. I said AR. He wrote Anthony Richardson. I think he'll be a bust, and it will be the end of Chris Ballard, who I love as a GM. Do you think he is more likely to sign a free agent quarterback, ideally draft a guy like Michael Pratt as a backup? When you get and you do what they did, draft him, they're all in. Now, Colin and I have talked about this. The time ticks fast. Here's where Ballard's going to get credit. I'm sure Steichen was on board, and he did hire what looks like a star coach. Shane Steichen is already a top 3 or 4 offensive coordinator in the league. And when you're the offensive coordinator and you're the head coach, that's a very, very valuable people. That's the guy that, let's face it, it's the most valued position in the NFL beside quarterback. It's Andy Reid, Sean McVay, it's Kyle Shanahan. Look at Matt LaFleur last year. Matt LaFleur had a ton of success, but we're like, he had Aaron Rodgers. And then it's like, damn, he just beat the shit out of Mike McCarthy. So now you got to talk about like LaFleur in their level. And he easily could have beaten Kyle in the second round. So to me, the second most valuable thing in the NFL is a head coach who's my OC that impacts the quarterback. Another Cowboy fan mad about no moves. It's just money, guys. You can't sign all your... Dak Prescott, as of recording this, he hasn't changed his contract. There's no contract extension. Dak Prescott's cap hit is $60 million. The salary cap is $250 million. I'm no mathematician. That's a pretty big percentage for one player. $60 million? Like I saw Debo today on Instagram complaining that they're cutting Eric Armstead. It's like, Debo, your cap hit this year, like you deserve to get paid, is $28 million, which is a lot of coin, man. Like part of the reason Eric Armstead's getting cut, like you take up a lot of space. 60, and Dak's double what that is. I'm reaching out because seeing Saban talk on Capitol Hill and bitch about how money has changed these kids has got me boiling. I'll preface this by saying he is without question one of the greatest coaches in football history. But spare me when you demanded to be the highest paid head coach in the sport and renegotiate your deal every time another coach got an higher annual salary. The highest paid coach in the sport and also by far the highest paid Alabama State employee. The school you have made hand over fist millions of these kids' bodies and this clown has a problem with them being compensated. Yeah, I mean, I think he's talking about the way this has operated, right? Alabama has been paying players forever. I got news for you. Lots of money relative to before NIL. Bags of cash. These kids have lived well. Saban, one thing John Calipari loves saying, right, is how much money he's made his players. Nick Saban has made, I mean, how many millionaires has he made in 15 years, right? And turned them into great players. Got them drafted high. They've become stalwarts of the NFL. Like, I understand the way he said it, but I think it's an overview of, like, I think the bigger problem is less how much you're going to pay me and more that if I don't pay you, I can leave, right? And listen, I've always said if a coach leaves, the kid should be able to leave. But this notion you can transfer whenever you want, like that's not how the NFL works. Travis Kelce can't just walk in Andy Reid like, pay me or I leave. Andy'd be like, you're under contract. So they have to find a way to meet in the middle. Now, I also think Nick saying that we did everything we could to impact people's lives, like anyone been around Alabama knows Dabo Swinney was very family oriented. Nick Saban was just 100% all football. It was, if you couldn't produce, get the fuck out of here. So he was pretty cutthroat. He was like Belichick of college football. So I hear you. I think he's more just complaining that this setup is messed up. I think it's also weird. Anytime you're not used to something, right? Before it's like Nick didn't have to deal with it. It's not like Nick was passing out the brown bags. They were just there. There was a third party. Now it goes right to the coach. I know technically you're not supposed to be able to recruit off that, but we all know it's BS. The parents look at him and go, well, how much are you going to pay me? And I just think that it's jarring for a guy that's 72 years old. Right or wrong. Like I understood both sides of it. I also think not as many people are getting paid as it feels, right? It's more everyone. I also think this. To play in, let's just say the SEC, obviously you got to be really good, right? You got to be like the 1% of the 1%er in high school. But if you're Nick Saban, like you've been used to elite players, like at every position, you've had a top 10 pick. So can you imagine his vibe when a guy on his own team who's a backup goes like, I want 400 grand. He's like, you're not even a fucking starter on my team. That I think he's talking more about that than like Bryce Young or Will Anderson wanting money. If they do, they'll get him money. It's more like Mike Locksley said it, who had been at Alabama. That his third string running back walked in his room and said he wanted 100 grand. That's where I think everything's a little out of whack. Next mailbag. Can you cover the teams that aren't doing a bunch in free agency out the gate? I think it's less about that right now. To me, the story right now is about who's doing stuff. And if you're not doing something and you matter, like, I'm sorry, I'm not going to spend much time talking about the Titans moves. Ridley, Alshire, like, until the Titans prove they're good, like, they're not going to get talked about much here. Let's face it, we're going to talk a lot about the good teams. I mean, that's who matters in the NFL. And then the teams that are complete disasters and someone's going to get fired. So, you got to be interesting. And sometimes you got to prove, like if Minnesota now just goes to become uninteresting, they won't get talked about as much. If the Bears with Caleb Williams are all of a sudden a playoff team, we're going to be talking about them a lot. Now, the Cowboys are obviously one of the biggest, they're one of the better teams in the NFL. Them not doing anything is a story. But like I said, it really has to do with their financial situation. Why does the NFL free agency happen before the draft? I'm curious because the current player should have more of a right from the players' union's perspective of where they sign if it were to happen after the draft. Is it a money reason? Curious as to if this was always the way. Yeah, I wonder if it has to do with the distribution of funds. But like ultimately, if I'm a player and I sign somewhere, like this is the NFL. They're drafting people at your position no matter what. Right? And an undrafted free agent can show up and be just as good as you. So it's about getting your money right now. You're going to have to compete. Certain players like Christian Wilkins is not competing for a spot. Calvin Ridley is going to start. But most of these guys signing, these solid deals, if they just suck or get beat out, it won't be long till they're on the bench. Like, that's the sport of football. This is not the NBA where once I give you $50 million, you're playing kind of. Like, guys get booted to the side all the time. So I'd argue it doesn't matter as much. I get a lot of Cowboy fans. I don't know what you guys were expecting to happen. I love this time of year. Baseball starting, free agency, GM playing chess for the draft. Every signing, we are winning the Super Bowl. Do you recall the last year the Falcons could have given Lamar 4 years, $200 million deal and 2 first-rounders to the Ravens. I do think we need to pump the brakes on this. This year, they gave 4 years, 180 to Kirk. The Ravens were never letting Lamar go. I know everyone wanted their team to make an offer to the Ravens. They had the right of first refusal. They were not going to let him walk. They were not. And when you do that, this happens in the NFL or the NBA too. It does tie up your cap for like 3 days or whatever the waiting period is. The Ravens were not letting him walk. John Harbaugh didn't tell me this, but I think we can all agree he was not a free agent. It felt like he was because there was a lot of stuff going on, but he was not. They had the right to match, and there's no way they weren't matching. Okay, we'll end on this. I have a life question for you. I just turned 22, live in New England, just hit 100K net worth. Damn, not bad, my friend. And work in IT, take it home, decent amount of money. My family and girlfriend always tell me I work too much and should enjoy life more while I'm young. But I'm more ambitious than them and want the nicer things in life. What's your opinion when people say, enjoy your life while you're young? I also want to move to Georgia within the next couple of years, and I wanted your advice on moving out of state. I'm not acting like I'm Leonardo DiCaprio, but I've always done well relative to the way I look, dating women that probably I shouldn't have been. But in my 20s, like I always pushed away when anything got serious. Why? Because I was so obsessed with what I was doing. And it's very hard. And listen, I'm jealous sometimes of people, my friends that had serious relationships in their 20s. It could never cross my mind because I always was so driven what I wanted to do and what I wanted to accomplish. And I was purely selfish in my 20s and even in my early 30s. And if, in fairness to whoever I was dating at the time, a lot of them, it's not like they weren't supportive, but I didn't even want to cross, like, I didn't have time to go to a wedding in October during football season. I can't, and listen, it's kind of sad. I mean, I did sometimes for my really close friends, but I sacrificed a lot, and a lot of people sacrifice a lot. Now, the one thing I've learned as I've gotten older, it's very, very powerful to have someone in your life who supports you, being a significant other, girlfriend, wife, fiance, whatever. That is a huge addition to your life. But if they are not supportive of what you're doing and you're all in, I never even gave people really the chance. I'm like, oh, they're going to slow me down. And it's obviously everything worked out well. I'm glad it did. But if someone wasn't supportive or like, I want to do this, like, I can't do this, I couldn't date them. I'm not giving you dating advice, but if they're not being supportive, and I also always thought about this, enjoy stuff while you're young. People are living much longer now. And if you have, when you're young, you're doing well, but it's not like you have that much money to do that much fun shit. So what are you really missing out on? To me, no one can tell you what to do with your life and know your life better than yourself. And I would say the worst thing you can ever do is not listen to your gut, whether that's in a relationship, whether that's in a job, whether that's people in your life trying to influence you doing something you don't want to do. Now, there's a fine balance of, like, never going out with your buddies. Like, you're not doing anything. You go out on a Friday or Saturday night, go have some fun, right? But when people are trying to slow you down from doing what you want to do, I just refuse to let that happen. Again, it's not healthy and it can make some people uncomfortable, and close friendships can kind of drift, which sucks, but it takes a lot to get to where you want to go. And then once you even start getting where you want to go, you feel like you keep doubling and tripling down. I'd also say this: there is no right or wrong way to do something. So other people, and a lot of people, think there are specific ways to live your life, right? Get married at this age, have this amount of kids, do this, stop doing this at this age. I've always been, fuck that. I'm going to do what I'm going to do. Now, there are times where you have to adapt and change because of family or whatever. But professionally, It's much harder to change and adapt the older you get because things do change. Maybe you have a child. Maybe you have financial obligations. You got a mortgage, maybe. So when you're young, you have way less responsibilities. I know you have a girlfriend, but if she's not behind your ambitions, I would say there are probably some red flags for the relationship's health long term, right? And your parents, listen, I mean, unless your parents are paying for your life, they can say whatever you want. My mom's always like, stop swearing, John. Like, I just talk like I talk. Can't help that. You know, if I would have listened to my parents on the way I should podcast, I probably wouldn't have the success of podcasting. So that there's a balance of listening to your family of what they tell you should do. I didn't have as much fun as most people I knew in college in my 20s because I was doing everything humanly possible in the world of football. And it took a lot of time. And now looking back, my life is better and actually freer than a lot of those people because of everything I gave up. And hopefully it keeps building on as we move forward. But I think the number one relationship advice as someone that's 39 and dated, was not really in serious relationships after high school, college till my mid 30s. It was very loose dating, was no one was getting in my way of what I wanted to do. And that was probably, I'm not saying that's the right way to do it. I obviously didn't meet the right person, but you have to stay true to your own beliefs or you're going to be miserable. And that was the one thing I refused to be is miserable in life. That was not going to happen. It's why I always give advice of like do something you like doing because you're going to spend most of your time doing what you do for a living. Even if you work 9 to 5, that's 40 plus hours, and you factor in commuting. Even if you work from home a couple days a week, it's a lot of time interacting with people and working in an industry. If you hate it, it's going to suck. So I would say follow your gut, and if you're an ambitious person, try to associate yourself with ambitious people. A lot of ladies out there that are supportive of that stuff. And when they are, you end up having more success and making more money. I would also say on the move, I would have moved way earlier looking back. I just didn't have the funds to move. It's the best thing I've ever done without hesitation. I fucking love Scottsdale. I love the vibe here. I love everything about it. And I feel re energized after the move. And I guess I've been here now several years, but I bought this house and been in it now 6 months. It's awesome. I would say if you're thinking about it, the one thing a doctor gave me advice a couple years ago, I went in just for a random physical. And this is when I told him, like, I'm just going to go and buy something. He's like, you know what I would do? I would recommend awesome family practitioner at UC Davis, South Davis Sutter. He said, just go for a while and rent and feel it out and then get a vibe. Cause he's like, I had some friends that moved places and then they hated it or they didn't like where they bought. So if you are going to move, one recommendation, like a big out of state move, especially if you don't know a lot of people there, is just rent, feel out the area, see where you like and where you don't like. And then it'll help you have more confidence if you ultimately want to buy a place and call that place home. Because if you're just renting at any moment, you can be, flexible and leave. Good question though.